From caves to artificial intelligence, humanity's journey from survival to code's creation. In prehistoric times, before there were cities, before people could write, and before machines made any noise, our ancestors lived in caves. They were hunter-gatherers, which means they got their food by hunting animals and gathering wild plants like berries, roots, and nuts. They moved from place to place with the changing seasons to find food and survive. Life was simple but precarious. Every day was a test of strength, wit, and cooperation. Their world revolved around one central goal: survival. They needed just enough food, shelter, and warmth to live another day. There was no surplus, no storage for distant futures, and certainly no thought of producing for others beyond their immediate tribe. But something remarkable happened over tens of thousands of years. Humans began to change not just their surroundings, but themselves, through ideas, tools, and social organization. The first great leap came with agriculture. Around 10,000 years ago, in places like the Fertile Crescent, people discovered they could plant seeds and grow their own food instead of chasing it. This shift from hunting and gathering to farming was revolutionary. For the first time, humans could settle in one place. Villages grew into towns, towns into cities. With stable food supplies, populations expanded. And with more people came more ideas, more specialization, and more complexity. Agriculture gave birth to what we might call the production economy. No longer were people merely surviving, they were creating. Farmers produced more grain than they needed. Potters made more vessels than their families could use. Weavers crafted cloth beyond personal necessity. This surplus allowed some people to stop producing food altogether and become artisans, soldiers, or rulers. Trade flourished. Societies became layered, with systems of governance, law, and culture. The human story was no longer just about staying alive, it was about building civilizations. Then came the Industrial Revolution, beginning in the 18th century. Steam engines, factories, and mechanized production transformed the world once again. What had taken weeks by hand could now be done in hours by machine. Goods once considered luxuries, like textiles, tools, or even books, became widely available. The scale of production exploded. Humanity entered an age where we didn't just meet our needs, we began to exceed them dramatically. Factories churned out products not only for local communities but for global markets. The economy was no longer rooted solely in land and labor but in capital, technology, and innovation. Yet even as machines reshaped our physical world, another revolution was quietly brewing, one not of steel and steam, but of information and ideas. By the late 20th century, the knowledge economy began to eclipse the industrial one. In this new era, value wasn't just in making things, but in knowing how to make them better, faster, smarter. Software replaced screws, algorithms replaced assembly lines. A single idea, a new app, a scientific breakthrough, a clever design, could be worth more than entire factories. Knowledge became the most valuable resource, and those who could generate, manage, and apply it rose to the forefront of society. Today, we live in a world of abundance, perhaps even excess. We produce far more food than the global population needs, though distribution remains unequal. We manufacture countless goods, many designed for convenience or novelty rather than necessity. Our economies are driven less by raw materials and more by data, creativity, and intellectual property. We work not just to survive, but to innovate, to connect, and to imagine futures beyond our current reality. And now, at the frontier of this knowledge-driven age, stands artificial intelligence, AI. Born from decades of research in mathematics, computer science, and cognitive psychology, AI represents perhaps the most profound shift since the invention of language or writing. Unlike previous tools, plows, looms, or even computers, AI doesn't just extend human capability, it mimics human thought. It learns from data, recognizes patterns, makes decisions, and even creates art, music, and text. In many ways, AI is humanity's own creation reflecting back at us, a mirror made not of glass, but of code and computation. But unlike the plow or the printing press, whose impacts were relatively predictable, the full consequences of AI remain uncertain. Will it liberate us from drudgery, giving us more time for creativity and connection? Or will it deepen inequalities, displace workers, and concentrate power in the hands of a few? Will it help solve climate change, cure diseases, and unlock the secrets of the universe, or will it be used to manipulate, surveil, and control? These questions hang in the balance, unanswered. What makes this moment so unique is that, for the first time in history, humans are creating something that may one day rival, or even surpass, our own intelligence. Our ancestors in the caves never imagined that their descendants would one day build thinking machines. They were focused on the next meal, the next shelter, the next sunrise. We, by contrast, are thinking centuries ahead, pondering not just survival, but legacy, ethics, and the very definition of what it means to be human. Yet, despite all this progress, the thread connecting us to those early humans remains unbroken. We still seek meaning. We still form communities. We still care for our young and plan for the future. The tools have changed, stone axes to smartphones, campfires to cloud computing, but the human spirit endures. We produce not just for ourselves, but for our children and for strangers we'll never meet. We create not only to survive, but to express, to explore, and to understand. Artificial intelligence may be the latest chapter in our story, but it is not the end. It is a tool, powerful, yes, but ultimately shaped by human choices. Just as agriculture and industry were guided by the values and decisions of their time, so too will AI reflect the wisdom or folly of ours. The journey from caves to code has been long and winding, marked by both triumphs and tragedies. But it has always been driven by one enduring trait, our relentless curiosity and capacity to imagine a world better than the one we inherited. As we stand on the threshold of an AI-driven future, we would do well to remember where we came from, not to romanticize the past, but to ground ourselves in what truly matters. Survival gave way to production, production to knowledge, and now knowledge is birthing intelligence beyond ourselves. The challenge ahead is not merely technological, but deeply human, to ensure that as we build smarter machines, we also become wiser stewards of our shared future.